Dear students and my teacher friends, Namaskar. I welcome you to the presentation lecture on reflex action. Now, before I start this lecture, I would like to tell you that I have divided this lecture into two parts. In first part, we are discussing the characteristics of reflexes. What are the reflexes that we are going to learn? And in second part, we are going to discuss about the components of the reflex arc. Okay, so characteristic of reflex arc, learning objective, describe the properties of a reflex, what are the reflexes. Okay, and this point is not there in your syllabus, so here we are discussing the properties of reflex. See, now the first question comes in our mind that what are the reflexes. So reflexes are the protective measures that are taken by our body to protect ourselves from the danger, that are called the reflexes. So now the property, see, the properties of reflexes are very rapid, they are pre-programmed, okay, and most of the time they are involuntary. The reflexes are the involuntary responses of our muscle or the glands which are present in our body, and these reflexes they are towards a particular stimulus. So for a particular stimulus, our body, muscle and gland respond, and this response are known as reflex. Reflexes are rapid, pre-programmed and involuntary. Now one example for reflex we can give, that imagine that accidentally you touch a hot burner on a stove. Now what you are going to do, so immediately you are going to remove your hand from that hot burner without you are realizing that your hand touch the hot burner, and you are not realizing it that the your hand is touching the burner, but before you realize you had removed your hand from that hot burner. It is the automatic process. Okay, so here the hot burner is providing the stimulus of hotness to our hand, and now there is a reflex action, and due to this rapid reflex action we remove our hand from this hot burner. Okay, so this is actually what happens in reflex action. Now the third point, see, all the reflexes have similar property. A stimulus is required to initiate a reflex. A stimulus will be the degree of hotness or coldness of an object, that can be a stimulus, or the temperature, hot or cold, season, that can be a stimulus. Then the odor or the smell, good smell or bad smell, that can be a stimulus. Then the pain can be a stimulus, the touch can be a stimulus. Okay, so all this are, or the electric current can be a stimulus. So stimulus are of various kind, and to to begin or initiate a reflex, a stimulus is required. Now since the reflexes are very rapid, okay, response are very quick, so in the reflex action only few neurons are involved and synaptic delay is minimal. That means the propagation of nerve impulse is very quick. Okay, and every time pre-program response is given to a particular stimuli. So in previous example, that your hand accidentally touch the hot burner. So now in future, whenever you are going to touch accidentally the hot burner, let's say two or three more time in future, if you touch, then all the time you are going to remove your hand from the hot burner. So every time the same response will be given, that the removal of hand from the hot burner. So response are pre-programmed, they are pre-decided. Now the response are involuntary and require no consciousness, okay, or pre-awareness. So you are not aware of the situation, or even if you are not conscious, okay, let's say even if you are sleeping and by mistake you touch the hot object, that time also you are going to remove your hand from that hot object. So it is also due to the reflex action, reflex activity, okay. And the reflexes are usually not suppressed, so all the time they are going to take place, they are going to occur, okay, they are never suppressed. We are not stopping our reflexes, we are not capable of that, they are automatic. Okay. Now reflex is a survival mechanism, and by this mechanism we are protecting our body from the danger, okay. and and once this action, this reflex action is completed, then the information about the dangerous situation is sent to our brain, okay. For example, in our case, by mistake you touch the hot burner, so you had remove your hand from the burner, but after that you will realize that accidentally your hand touched the hot burner, okay. So this response is very fast, okay. Reflex action is very fast, and it is to protect ourselves from the dangerous situation, okay. Now the fifth point, now we are discussing the component of a reflex arc, okay. So the learning objective of components of a reflex arc. So list the structures involved in a reflex arc and the steps in its action. So now we are discussing the reflex action component of a reflex arc. Now see, now in the reflex arc the structures which are included is, one is sensory receptor, then the neural wiring between the two, and an effector. For example, in this case, one example is given. See here, see, this is the iron nail they are showing, and and as you can see, the top of the iron nail has made a puncture in your skin. Now what happened, you went to visit your friend's house, you went to meet your friend at his home, and at your friend's house there was an old door, and one iron nail came out from that old door, and accidentally that iron nails top, okay, the pointed portion is poking your skin, or it make a small, is it is just touching your skin. So now what happened, now you will experience a pain, but you will experience a pain afterward. Before that, the reflex action is completed. Okay, so your skin, the receptor in your skin are sensory receptor. Okay, then there are sensory and motor neuron, that is neural wiring, and you are removing your hand from that iron nail. So the your hand muscle, bicep muscle, are the effector organ. Okay, so effector is responding. So a reflex arc including sensory receptor, effector, and neural wiring between sensory receptor and effector is present. Okay, now reflex action always begin at a receptor. Okay, and receptor are present in peripheral nervous system. Then from receptor, nerve impulse propagate via the sensory neurons or the nerve to the central nervous system, that is your brain or the spinal cord. And from your brain or spinal cord, once again the nerve comes out, and the motor neuron, they innervate the muscle or the gland. Okay, and in completion, for the completion of this reflex action, so reflex action completes in intermediate steps. And how many intermediate steps are involved in particular reflex action? It depends on the complexity of the reflex action. More complex reflex action, that means more number of steps are involved in that particular reflex action. Okay, now here in this here we are discussing the simplest reflex action, and in this reflex action you will see that there are total 5 steps are involved. Okay, so this first step, this is the first step. Okay, see, in first step, a stimulus is activating a sensory receptor. In this case, iron nail. Okay, the point of iron nail is poking your skin. Okay, it has just made a small puncture in your skin, so the sensory receptor in your skin, they are activated, and now they are generating the nerve impulse. Okay, so sensory receptors are dendritic ending of a sensory neuron. Okay, receptor, what are the receptor are the dendritic ending of a sensory neuron, or receptor are specialized receptor cell. Then this sensory receptor in different reflex action, they respond to external or the internal stimuli. And these external or internal stimuli example are temperature, pressure, or the tactile changes. That means, let's say someone is touching us, okay, our body, so now there will be a generation of reflex action if someone touches to us that time also. Okay, now proprioceptor are sensory receptor, and this proprioceptor, they are present in our muscle and the tendons. Okay, and when this proprioceptor when they are stimulated, okay, for example by gentle tapping of a tendon, so that will initiate a reflex as well. Okay, so someone taps our tendon or muscle, that time also the reflex action begins, okay, initiates. Now here, see, now due to this poking of this iron nail, uh, the sensory receptor from your skin, they have generated the nerve impulse, and now this nerve impulse is propagating by this blue color sensory neuron. So this sensory neuron is sending the nerve impulse regarding the pain that you are experiencing, and that pain information in the form of nerve impulse propagated into the spinal cord. Okay, so see on the second point, the sensory neuron transmit a nerve signal to the CNS. Okay, sensory neuron then here here in this case, sensory neuron is sending the information to the spinal cord. So nerve impulse has reached to the spinal cord. Now inside spinal cord, once the nerve impulse has reached, what happened? See, information from the nerve signal is processed, it is integrated, that the iron nail is poking you, that information is integrated, analyzed, understood what is happening. Okay, then the spinal cord is deciding, okay, what action need to be taken. So spinal cord has decided that the iron nail is touching your skin, so these are the purple color cell are the interneurons, and they are present between the sensory neuron and motor neuron. They are present in the spinal cord, and they are present between sensory and motor neuron. So now these neurons, they have decided what action is required. So they are ordering they are ordering your bicep muscle, and they order by sending the nerve impulse. So now the nerve impulse is propagating in this motor neuron, and this motor neuron is bringing the nerve impulse to your bicep muscle, and now you are removing your hand away from that iron nail. Okay, so that decision, that nerve impulse propagate via the motor neuron, and finally nerve impulse reaches to your effector organ or the muscle, and you are removing your hand from that iron nail. So here in this case, see, so in the spinal cord, information from the nerve signal is processed in the integration center by interneuron. Okay, now if the reflex is complex one, then more number of interneurons are involved, okay, within the CNS, and more interneuron, they are integrating and processing the incoming sensory input or the nerve impulses, and then all this interneuron, they are going to transmit the information to motor neuron. Okay, now in the simplest reflex, in the simplex in the simplest reflex, the interneurons are not involved. In the simplest reflex, sensory neuron make direct contact with motor neuron. That means sensory neuron synapses directly on a motor neuron in the CNS. That means in the brain or spinal cord. Okay. Now, as we have discussed this, that the motor neuron transmit a nerve signal from the CNS to an effector organ. Effector organ is the brain. Effector organ is the muscle or the gland. okay, of our body. And CNS either it will be a brain or a spinal cord. Now signal is transmitted to the anterior root of a motor neuron, and then the spinal nerve to the peripheral effector organ, a gland of muscle. Okay, so here you can see this one is the anterior root, and this anterior root merges with the posterior root. This one is the posterior root, this is the anterior root. Anterior posterior root join together and they form the spinal nerve. So this is the spinal nerve, and inside the spinal nerve, this one is the motor neuron. Okay, and this motor neuron with the spinal nerve, they are going to reach to the peripheral effector organ, and this peripheral effector organ might be a gland or it might be a muscle. Okay, now the effector, when the nerve impulse reaches to effector organ respond. Okay, and how this effector organ is responding? So if it is a muscle, it will contract and it will remove your hand, it will move your hand from that dangerous situation. Okay, so these are all the steps. Okay, and in this case, this is the arc. Okay, see, sensory receptor in your skin, then sensory neuron. Okay, sensory neuron, then this interneuron. Okay, then this motor neuron, and finally this effector. So this entire neural wiring, this entire neural wiring is known as the reflex arc. Yeah, so this figure, simple reflex arc. Now we are moving forward. Now one more example we are discussing for reflex action. Okay, now first you see this figure. 1 minute. See, in this case, now in this case, what we are looking that this is the doctor's this one is the doctor hammer. Okay, and one patient visit the doctor's clinic, and patient complains that he has having certain kind of pain in his leg. So now doctor start to find out the pain center, where exactly the uh, pain center is located. So in finding that pain center, what happened? The doctor gently tapped the talar ligament. Okay, so here you can see with the small hammer, doctor is tapping this talar ligament, and as the doctor is tapping the talar ligament, uh, now the quadricep muscle, see, the muscle of the thigh, this quadricep muscle stretches due to this tapping by the hammer of doctor to the talar ligament. Okay, so doctor is tapping the talar ligament, and due to this tapping to talar ligament, the thigh muscle or the quadricep is stretching. And now as the quadricep muscle has stretch, this excites the muscle spindle in the quadricep muscle. Okay, so now what is happening? The muscle spindle has excited. Now from this muscle spindle, as you can see with the blue color, this is the sensory neuron. Okay, and this sensory neuron is sending the efferent impulse to the spinal cord. So now the nerve impulse reach to the patient's spinal cord. Here, after reaching in the spinal cord, this sensory neuron make synapse with two kind of cell. One kind of cell is red color, shown in red color are the motor neuron, and second type of cell is the interneuron, shown in a green color. So doctors tapping regarding the information of doctors tapping reach to the spinal cord, and this sensory neuron is bringing that information, and sensory neuron is making the contact with the motor neuron and the interneuron in the spinal cord. Now this red color motor neuron sends the activating impulses to quadricep muscle. Okay, and as the quadricep muscle, they are receiving the nerve impulses from the motor neuron. So this quadricep muscle, they are excited, they are contracted. Okay, and this quadricep muscle, as they are contracting, so now the patient, as you can see, the patient is extending the knee. Okay, patient is now extending the knee. Now one more type of neuron that you can see is that the green color interneuron, and you can see that green color is synapsing with the blue color, and blue color is used for ventral horn neuron. The blue color or the purple color is used for the ventral horn neuron. And what this ventral horn neurons are doing, so these neurons are preventing antagonistic muscle. So antagonistic muscle means the muscle of the hamstring, and these muscles are resisting the contraction of the contraction. That means these ventral horn neurons, they are actually resting the hamstring muscle. Okay, so this, as the hamstring muscle are relaxing, they are not going to oppose the contraction of quadricep muscle, and the patient is able to extend his knee. Okay, so you can see this figure. So this is the this is about the Taylor or the knee jerk reflex. Okay, and this Taylor reflex is an example of a stretch reflex. Now one more example. See, in this figure, a simple stretch reflex is described. Now let's see the first figure. Imagine that you You are visiting your friend's home, and your friend's mother, that means your auntie, is very kind, and she is very generous to you, and she is offering you some orange juice. Okay, so she had given you the glass. This, as you can see, this glass is empty, and now your auntie is pouring the orange juice in the glass. Now, as she is filling the orange juice in the glass, so now the force is exerted on your hand, and your hand, it was earlier in this position, and your hand slightly, it is coming downwards due to this filled glass. Okay, and here, as the glass is poured by orange juice, so your bicep muscle are stretching. So an external force, in this case the orange juice, is stretching the muscle. Now what happened? See, from your bicep muscle, from the muscle spindle, now the sensory neuron nerve impulse propagate and reach into the spinal cord. So action potential reach to the spinal cord. Okay, now what happened? Now in the spinal cord, sensory apparent neuron, they synapse with another kind of neuron, and this another kind of neuron are alpha motor neuron. Okay, so first action potential came in, and now the action potential is propagating outside through the alpha motor neuron. So now alpha motor neuron, they are sending the action potential to your bicep muscle, and now your bicep muscle are contracting. So as the bicep muscle are contracting, you are bringing your arm into normal upward direction. Okay, and this entire process is very fast. In a fraction of second of time, this entire process, this entire reflex action is completed. So this illustration also showing the simple stretch reflex. Yeah. Now one more example I would like to show you. One minute. Let me find that example. 1 minute. Okay, now we are discussing this monocyte mono, as you can see over here, it is written monosynaptic reflex and polysynaptic reflex. Okay, now here, see, on left hand side, monosynaptic reflex, we have already discussed this thing. Okay, the patient, how the patient was uplifting his knee, extending his knee, that we have discussed. The doctor was tapping the ligament with a small hammer. Now in the monosynaptic this monosynaptic reflex, as you can see in the figure, what is happening? See, there is a direct communication between the sensory and motor neuron. So here with the blue color, this one is the This one is the sensory neuron, and with the red color, this one is the motor neuron is shown. Okay, and this is the synapse. Okay, so in short, in monosynaptic reflex, sensory neuron synapses with motor neuron in the spinal cord directly. Now in this case, right hand side, now the right hand side is showing the we can say this is the withdrawal reflex is shown. Now in withdrawal reflex, what is happening, let's see, imagine a situation that you are in your chemistry lab and you are doing some practical, and accidentally you touch the flame of the burner. Okay, so without looking at the burner, the moment you touch the flame of burner, you are going to remove your hand from that flame of the burner. Okay, so here this is the example of withdrawal reflex or the polysynaptic reflex. Now in this reflex, what is happening, let's check it. See, so flame is touching your hand. Now the sensory neuron is shown with the blue color, and that your hand is touching the flame. That nerve impulse or the action potential reach into the spinal cord, and this sensory neuron, they make a synapse with the interneurons. So the interneuron, they interpret the situation, they understand the situation, they analyze the situation, and they also decide what action need to be taken. So now this interneuron, they send the order to the motor neuron, and this motor neuron is sending nerve impulse to the muscle of your hand. So now your muscles of your hand are contracting, and you are removing your hand, or you are uplifting your hand from the flame of the burner. Okay, so this is called the withdrawal reflex or polysynaptic reflex. And here you can see that sensory neurons are there. Okay, then interneurons are there, and then there are motor neuron. Okay, and in case of monosynaptic, so there were only sensory and motor, and they were synapting. Okay, now I would like to show you some figures. See, in this figure is the cross section of spinal cord. Okay, this is also cross section of spinal cord. Now in this figure, process of sensory input and motor output by the spinal cord. Okay, so here you can see how the spinal cord is receiving information, sensory information from various organ of our body, and how with the help of the tract, spinal cord is sending the information to our brain. So ascending tract, they are sending the nerve impulses to the brain. Brain interpreted, brain analyzed, understand the situation, and brain orders. So these brain orders, they propagate via the descending tract, and now the nerve impulse via the spinal nerve, they are reaching to the skeletal muscle or our bodily organs. Okay, so this is how the sensory inputs are processed, and this is how the spinal cord and brain are involved in interpreting, in processing the sensory input. Now in this figure you can see the spinal cord's spinal nerve. Okay, this is also, they have cut the one vertebra, and in the center you can see the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord how the spinal nerve is arising. Okay, Now in this figure, see, in this figure, all the tracks, sensory and motor tracks of the spinal cord are shown. Okay, a small concept map for reflex action. Okay. And this is also general component of a reflex arc, simplest example of reflex arc. This is the stretch reflex. Okay, we have already discussed this stretch reflex. Okay, so stretch reflex is a simple monosynaptic reflex. Okay, this is not in your syllabus. This reflex is Golgi tendon reflex. Just in case you are interested, you can go through this figure. This reflex, okay, cross extensor reflex. Okay, you can go through this figure and you can understand about the, if you are interested, you can understand. Then this we have discussed. Stretch reflex we have already discussed. Okay. And this is tendon reflex. Just in case you are interested. This is the flexure or the withdrawal reflex. So only for your information I am showing you. You don't have to prepare all these reflexes in this much detail. See, a representative reflex arc. See, Taylor tendon reflex arc. This we have already discussed. Okay. See, withdrawal of right leg, extension of right leg, flexure and cross extension reflexes. Simple stretch reflex we have already discussed. Flexion and cross extension reflex. Okay. Five components of all reflex arc. Okay. Components of reflex arc. Tendon reflex. Okay. Stretch reflex. This one. The cross extensor reflex. Positive plus excitatory synapse minus inhibitory synapse. G is given. Okay. So with this, we have completed this presentation lecture on reflex action. I hope you have enjoyed this presentation lecture, and I also hope that this presentation lecture will be helpful in your exam preparation and also in your studies. My name is Manish Kusti sir. I am from Ahmedabad, India. Bye bye. Namaste.